Welcome, I am Johannes Moller and I'm very happy that you are watching this video about True Temperament. And if you want to actually just know about a particular aspect of True Temperament like tuning, then you can already now just go ahead and forward to that section. You can see the different sections and the timings in the descriptions, all right? Because this is probably going to be maybe a little bit of a long video, but feel free to, of course, watch the full thing. And I know that this video perhaps can't answer all the questions about True Temperament. So do feel free, of course, if there are additional things you want to know, to write a comment here or just write to me directly. So let's begin. True Temperament is a technological development that I'm really excited about, and I can tell you from a personal point of view, I have not been more satisfied or enjoyed playing guitar more since I got my hands on this technology. Now, there can be a lot of people who are very skeptical to this or even afraid. Perhaps mostly because the way it looks. And we need to remember though that anything new, anything to do with development can be scary. Each and every significant invention in history have seemed scary at first, but as we know, a lot of things like electricity have made our life tremendously much more comfortable and better. And for me, True Temperament is one of those things. It's on the line in the development of guitar. It's just one of those things that just makes it a little bit better. We're getting that sort of stream of development right in our hands. And to me, it's a great honor to actually have been such an integral part of bringing this system to the classical guitar. And of course, it's already been used on electric guitar for many years, and that we're not going to talk about today. Although some of the aspects of tuning will also apply probably to electric guitar. We're currently developing this for steel string guitar, and we will see that soon. Now, if you already are an owner of a Sueño guitar, this is particularly interesting for you, and I really want you particularly to learn about how to tune using True Temperament. And of course, if you're thinking about getting a Sueño guitar or using this system on your guitar, you can of course also change the fretboard. Or if you're a luthier that is interested in using this system, there'll also be some really interesting information right at the end, also to do with the final calibration of the system. But I don't quite know exactly the best way to begin, but I would like to just say something briefly about how this works. So True Temperament frets are basically bended frets, and this is thanks to modern technology. These are done actually in Sweden using laser to cut them out in stainless steel. So already there, I'm quite excited about that, honestly, because we all know as guitarists that our frets after 10 or less, even 4 or 5 years, and then of course after 10, 20 and so on, these frets are pretty damaged usually, our frets, but these are stainless steel frets, so I tell you, they're not going to get damaged, which already I think it's kind of an improvement. That again, some people are very scared about this, particularly luthiers. They say, oh my God, I cannot work with that. We have now been working with these stainless steel frets. We have adjusted them, we have filed them and so on. We've done a lot of things to them and we have not had any problems. Of course, they're a little harder to work with, but again, that's exactly what's good about them, because they are much more resistant. But it doesn't mean that you cannot manipulate them as you wish, which I will talk a little bit more in the end when we talk about calibration and other things to do with that. But basically, why is it so that these frets are bended like this, and what is wrong with the normal frets? Or wrong? There's nothing wrong, of course, but myself, I used regular frets biggest part of my life, and you would think logically that this will create some sort of impeccable equal temperament because all the frets are the same, and if you calculate that right, well, we're going to already now start a little bit to look at a tuner here, which I'm going to bring into the screen. What we can see, for example, is, here I'm tuning this guitar here to, okay, getting it as precise as humanly possible. We think, oh, we do this with a tuning machine, how come it's not working? For example, if you are on the first string and I go to the F, you see it's pretty good on the first string. I go to first fret, alright, a little higher, but marginally. Of course, now we're talking really minute changes here. We see pretty much spot on the F, alright, and the E. But if I go already to the second string, see, already it's too high. Because the fret is the same here. We cannot individually adjust this for each string. Because each string has its own pressure, it's its own weight. So when you press it down, although it's the same distance I'm pressing it down, that very little pressing down affects each string differently. Especially the thickest string here, the G, look at that. It's severely matches almost is something like 8 cents higher. And you see on the first string, the F was pretty much spot on. So that is already why the straight fret just will only be a bare compensation for all of them. So we're not actually considering each and every note. Okay, now we have a D here. See, already a little bit too high. A, tune it up first. Now go to first fret. A little bit higher, you see? E. Pretty good, you see? So that wasn't affected as much. And we're now going to have a look at the True Temperament frets, which you can see here are very much adjusted because of these things. Because if you have a straight fret, you have to only make sort of an average that works for each and every string. And before we go on to explain what's going on in the True Temperament, I would like to now also explain one of the issues with straight frets, because what we hear a lot, which I, to some degree, I can totally understand and agree with that. Some people say, well, that's how we are used to hear an E major chord, where the G sharp just is really much higher. We're used to that, and we think it's beautiful. And you know what? That is actually a valid point. But the problem is that, let's say if this is a type of guitar temperament that has its own charm, its own life, the problem is that it's not consistent throughout the fretboard. See, already that's a bit lower, and we'll talk about that's a lot lower, and that's also lower, and that's too high, for example, again. So the problem is, even if this is the most charming sound with that little bit higher G sharp, then the problem is here is not the same. Here's not the same again, and so we're getting this inconsistency over the fretboard with how the notes are pitched, and that's perhaps the greatest problem with straight frets. It's not so much that we cannot get used to these chords being in a certain way. The problem is if I'm going to now play that same thing, so for example up there, it's just a completely different, let's say, temperament then up here than it is here. So each position really creates almost like different temperaments. And that is what makes the guitar sounds a little bit less, hope I don't offend anyone, but a little bit less serious than, for example, a piano. Especially on classical guitar, I think one of the reasons why the guitar is never really accepted into the classical music You can disagree with me if you want, but in my opinion, this is really the one thing that will never, until now, hasn't made the guitar really a serious classical instrument, that you have this kind of roughness in basically, being just differently tuned in different positions. And you can say, yes, the string quartet is not playing exactly equal temperament, yes, but they're doing consistently these colorings and so on. And as a guitarist, even if we try to compensate by bending and so on, which I did for many years, I tried really very hard to learn to, with vibrato or by compensating. It really makes your life really difficult, and when it comes to bigger chords, it's just not possible to, be that precise and compensating. It's hard enough to play guitar already. Now, so this is a new section of the video where we're going to talk about the True Temperament offsets, okay? So this has to be made very clear right now and here that True Temperament is not exactly equal temperament. It's a particular temperament that Anders Tudell, the inventor of True Temperament, has developed over many, many years. And the thing is that if you have completely equal temperament, like you often have on a synthesizer, for example, there's a certain aspect of it which is slightly dull and a little bit artificial. And anyone who is a piano tuner or knows a piano tuner can confirm that, of course, the real mastery of tuning a piano, you don't do it with a tuner, but by ear, and that it's not exactly that 100% equal mathematically calculated temperament. Even each individual piano may have certain twerks to it, just in terms of the sound. And we know that we basically, to make it really beautiful, it's not exactly the equal temperament. So True Temperament has its own offsets, all right? And I'm going to pull out a tuner here. You can see that, for example, the G string here, I'm going to, actually what we need to pull out is the True Temperament chromatic offset. And I can tell you right now that if you're using a Sueño guitar or a True Temperament guitar, you should download this PDF. You can see in the description of this video, you can with a link there, you can download this, and you should print that out and use this and memorize it. I'm also using here a tuner, and the one I recommend is Clear Tune. I just download to my phone, but basically it can be any tuner that has a very specific and clear instruction about the exact cents, okay? Like you see here, on this one I can see here the third string is exactly 4 cents high, which you can see here very clearly. There are other tuners circling, and there's even a tuner that claims to have its own program for True Temperament. So far I have not seen that work at all, so please don't get that one. That is also quite expensive. If you just want to go with my advice, I would recommend Clear Tune, or basically any other tuner that really precisely shows you the cents. You could say, why don't we program this to be precise in the software? But actually, in my opinion, it's better that you're aware of the offsets, because in some cases you might want to slightly change this, and it's also important to know these offsets, as sometimes we may not just use the open strings to tune. But I don't want to confuse it too much. We're going to have a brief look here. Don't get confused too much about the chromatic tuning offsets, although that can be very interesting for you to know in case you want to retune the guitar in different tunings. Then this can be really important to know. Or if you simply just want to go through the fretboard and see how this works, which again goes in the end section where we talk about the calibration, then this is useful. So, but I wanted to just go straight down to the where you see each string listed, and we're going to do this string by string. So the first one here, it's a -1 cent. It's okay, -1 cent. 1 cent is tremendously little, but we're trying to achieve some high level of intonation here. So we actually want you to go for that. Go for the -1. And of course, as you play, the guitar can go out of tune, no doubt about it. There's more other aspects, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, which to do with also, of course, when we press, a slight movement here and there also can put up several cents, up to 10 cents even. But we want to have as a good starting point as possible. So again, if you find this video a little bit rambling on, me talking too much, do feel free to just go into the different sections where you can perhaps find specifically the information you're looking at. But without further delay, so you see second string here, also -1 on the B. Now, the third string here is actually quite high. We go up to +4. Of course, over time you will quickly learn to memorize this. Alright, and the fourth string is +2. The A is spot on, 0. Alright, spot on the line. The sixth, be a little bit, this is really interesting. Pay attention to this. The first string was -1. The second string, -2. Magic, isn't that amazing? What I want you to be aware of is that higher notes decay quicker, especially the high ones. Ding, ding. Alright? So the lower one is more stable. That's why we tune it slightly lower. This is also a magic which we know in a piano, a well-tuned piano. The lower register is tuned a little bit lower, the higher register a little bit higher. Also in the orchestra we know that the top notes, the first violin or the high woodwind, so whatever it is playing up there, they should tastefully go a little high. Of course, we also know that there's a tendency in orchestras, this is extra information, but I said a little bit, and it's also very irritating in the orchestra when the flutes, for example, intonate too high, as if they want to overshine the rest of the orchestra. But that is a bit tastefully a little bit higher, okay? So, again, a lot of information. So, this section is about to be finished, where I'm talking about the true temperament chromatic offsets, alright? And the reason for this is just what we hear now. It should be in tune. Wow, it's not exactly equal temperament. It's something even better. And of course, it's a little bit favored, particularly to the chords that we love so much on the guitar. Alright, E and so on. But even other more unusual chords sounds absolutely beautiful. And as I'm going up here, wow, that's also sounding really nice, especially when my fingers are in place. Alright, so we're getting an opposite to what I talked about before with the straight frets, where we had almost like a different temperament in each position. We're now getting that same beautiful offsets across the guitar here. And I'm going to be a little naughty and do the comparisons with straight frets. Again, I'm going to now prove it to you. I'm tuning it well. Because sometimes people think I'm faking this by on purpose making the straight fret guitar completely out of tune. But no. Of course, I could have faked this video of the tuner here, but if you're really that skeptical, then well, try it for yourself. So what we have now, okay, I said it's not. We can get used to that, but the problem is it's different. That's better actually. And now that's kind of not so pleasing and pretty off. Not at all. Just do that slowly again. You hear? It's kind of acceptable colored, but it's different. And when you hear them after each other, it's a little bit inconsistent, let's say. All right. So now let's get back to our wonderful True Temperament guitar. So, and again, I'm going to show you now how I'm actually using the offsets to tune this. -1. Alright, so we go E. See, beautiful. And again, oh, the same. Same. Wow, isn't that awesome to get that as a reward? We can try other chords too. For example, G. And this one has to be very careful. It's pretty nice. And then, all right, and I'm gonna go back and do that G chord. It should still the same guitar. I did not fake it, so have a go G. All right, okay. Again, a little different, and again, a little different, and then again, different. You know, so that's the problem. I'm gonna do now again. So for example, I'm gonna do C. Okay, C. So C. C. Okay, maybe. All right. Some are okay. Some are. It's mostly that they're different. And here we go. True temperament. C there. C there. Very nice. C there here. Oh, very nice. And yeah, beautiful. Let's just continue. This is too much fun. Again, do skip ahead if you don't like this. This is getting a little bit too much for you. Then please skip ahead to other sections. I love B. Do you like B minor? I love B minor. Is one of my favorite. Or see. Let's do it again. Actually, what you notice here is my fingers were not completely precise. But wow, look at that. And now, or even I'm gonna be a little bit. Oh, this is a hard one. Or even let's. This is very hard on the fingers, and I have to press on either of these guitars. I'm gonna do my best to press very well. Because the higher we go, the more sensitive a little pressure goes. So of course, the higher we are, the harder it is to reach this perfect precision. So of course, even with True Temperament, to some degree, we have to still be very aware of the pressure. Okay. And now B minor. This is alright, and then this one is quite okay actually. That's why we would like to use that one a lot on guitar. But of course now, and now we're gonna. This is really difficult, of course, also on this one. But here, although even I'm trying to pay attention to my fingers, I just struggle. It's quite hard for me to really get it in tune. All right. Now let's take one more chord, and then I'm going to move on. And of course, I also made a more a bit of comparison video, and there's also going to be. This probably maybe it's already out when you see this video. I'm gonna make yet another comparisons video where we have really one after the other. I made one last year. Well, I don't know when you're seeing this video. Maybe it's 10 years from now. I don't know, but which I'm pretty happy with. But since I made that video, we have developed yet more the art of compensating these frets into more perfection. So there should be another one coming out or already out with even more precise comparisons. Okay, so let's do D again. This is straight frets, pleasing, not a problem. We're used to, it's like you say, we're quite used to that sound, and I don't have a problem with it. The problem I have with it is that it's fine here, and it's different here, and it's different there, and it's again different there. Not to talk about if I do that one. Or, for example, they're again quite different. And I hope now that you will see that on the True Temperament, first of all, honestly though, just the first D, to me it's more pure, it's calm. It gives you peace of your heart and your mind. That's another thing, even just like playing True Temperament just makes you feel so fantastic actually. You should try it. It is I haven't no scientific proof, but I think it could even be better for your health because it's just so I get so much joy. Wow! Oh my God, that is so pure and beautiful. Oh, and isn't that beautiful? And let's say the really difficult ones like this one, still okay. Okay, this is a hard one. Let's see if I can. See, it's at least the same. If I now go back to the straight frets again, what we're getting is okay, but different. Again, different, and it's kind of inconsistent that when you get used to True Temperament, you suffer a little bit because you feel it's like it's not really stable. It's like, now it's this temperament, and then it's different again, and then I go and somehow it's like it's moving between these different tunings and temperaments as with the True Temperament, which again is not an equal temperament. It's this quite interesting offsets, which we just saw in the other section where I explained those. But see, they're all the same offsets across the fretboard. This is absolutely a phenomenal development of the guitar, and I hope I'm very happy if you watched this far, and if you were skeptical about it, I think this is really starting to change you. I hope so, at least, because my investment in using True Temperament is huge, and I can tell you that we got in contact with True Temperament. I got in contact with True Temperament already more than 10 years ago, and it's been a tremendous journey to actually go to this point where we have the full system implemented on classical guitar. This just makes me so excited. And when I first got in contact with this, of course, I was not producing my own guitars at that time. And it was so tremendously hard to get anyone to try this. And although I did manage somebody to try it took them ages even to have an interest in start. It was standing on their shelves for years. Extremely frustrating. So it was actually one of the reasons why I ended up, not the only reason, but one of the final kind of things that made me really say I'm going to start my own guitar brand, was that I was tired of waiting for the industry to just be tremendously conservative and not forward thinking. So I created Sueño, which is not just a True Temperament. It has a lot of things about these that, in my opinion, this is of course very personal. I created Sueño. It's a high-end brand. I basically wanted to make my personal, everything that I love about guitar. Sounds arrogant, I wanted to make the best guitars in the world, and I think I did. And you may not believe me or think so, because of course that is not a objective statement. But for me today, I don't have no interest in playing any other guitar that is not with True Temperament, or even that is not Sueño, because of course every aspect of Sueño has been completely adjusted to ultimate playability, of course to my taste. So of course somebody might have a tremendous different taste, but still then what I did is, that's why I created the 3 models so far, apart from the Sueño Limited, which is a whole other story. So I hope I explained now clearly how the True Temperament has its own world of offsets, which again you can see in that PDF, which you can download in you can see a link in the description to this YouTube video. All right, or if you're watching it somewhere else, there should hopefully be a link somewhere. All right, how to tune your guitar with True Temperament frets. You can of course tune by ear, but I strongly recommend that you use a tuner. And it should be a tuner that is very precise and shows very clearly by scent the offsets up and down. For example, I always use the Clear Tune application, which you can get on your phone or on your iPad. And then I recommend that you download my True Temperament offset list, which you can also see right now here. And don't worry about the first part, which just explains each and every note, how these offsets work, because True Temperament is not an equal temperament. It's a very, very magical and special temperament for the guitar that is consistent throughout the fretboard. And but what you should look at is the list here of each string. So with this tuner, as you can also see now on screen, the first string we tune to -1, second one -1, third one +4, fourth +2, A0, 6 -2, and ta-da! Wow, we have this really awesome, beautiful tuning. And especially if you're in a recording session or in a concert or is noisy, I really do recommend using the tuner as a standard, because that way you will very quickly and always be accurate, okay? However, sometimes it might just be so that you forget your phone, or you don't have access to the tuner, or runs out of battery. So don't worry, I'm going to show you also how to do this by ear. But before I do that, I just want to quickly mention that if you're using alternative tunings, for example with a D tuning, you can see here I recommend -2. The reason for this is the low notes, the lower you go, the more they kind of burl around there. I don't know if that's the proper word, but basically compared now to the 4th string, which is +2, this is 4 cents lower. But it magically, also if you just tune by ear, most of the time we end up with something like this. Then we have that beautiful detuning. And if you go to G, same thing there. Remember how the 3rd string was +4? I'm gonna correct that now. Then the G can perhaps be +2, for example, just a little lower. Then we get that really and so on. And if you use other retunings, you can of course look at this True Temperament chromatic tuning offsets to see the specific offsets for each and every note chromatically. However, I know that a lot of retunings are often based on modes and for modal playing. So in general, those type of tunings can easily just be done also by ear. And it might also be so that you don't want to stick with the precise 440, you know. There's some people that want to use a slightly different standard sort of starting point. For example, Agustin Barrios Mangoré, the fantastic legend, guitarist from the jungle, one of my favorites. He, of course, used, I don't know what he tuned with, maybe with the moon or something, I don't know. He always used the very different tunings. So, of course, then, unless we then recalculate these offsets, which I guess maybe we should do, but then you can also just do it by ear, which I'm going to show you right now how to do. It's not more complicated than that you should do it only by primes and octaves, okay? So you should not use this system of using harmonics. That is just not going to work. It will be a shame to use that system because you're not going to get the most out of this fantastic True Temperament which you're now using. But you can use the tip all the way of primes. So for example, E and E to the 2nd string, B and B, D and G. But bear in mind, when you do that, as many of you probably know already, the risk is that we're not so precise, so by the time we get to the 6th string, it's slightly off. So whether you use that or another system, you should always combine, I think, with another one. And generally speaking, my experience with True Temperament, the octaves are the best. So I've been doing this. So octaves, maybe the G to the, like this, the G. Maybe the B to the E, and then two, we're get a pretty nice accurate tuning. Of course, saying that, if I would tune with the tuner, you see I was not too off actually. And of course, if you get good at this, if you're really good at tuning by ear, it should be pretty precisely corresponding with the offset list. Bear in mind though, as you're pressing down, there is the tiniest change of pressure can completely change by several cents the intonation. So after all, I still do recommend using the tuner as your standard thing, but of course for emergencies, yes, we should also train ourselves to tune by ear, and as I mentioned, do that in octaves or primes. That is the basic system to use this system right. All right, thank you so much. Can you change an existing guitar to True Temperament? Yes, you can. However, it's a little bit of a complicated process, and I would probably recommend that you have your personal luthier do that for you. However, I should say that in addition to just implementing the frets, the system that I use in addition to compensate from this is rather complicated. But if you want to get into that, there is another section in this video right at the end where I'm actually going to try to talk a little bit about that. Okay, so to conclude this, I would probably recommend, rather more than anything else, to just get a guitar made with True Temperament from the beginning. But of course, I have also had some guitars that especially in the early process when we started experimenting with this, I've had some other guitars that have been changed successfully, and these compensations could of course be implemented later. Does True Temperament affect the feeling of playing? Well, this is one of the most common questions I get all the time, and I would like to tell you here that it really does not, surprisingly at all, in my experience, affect your playing. If you would close your eyes and I put this guitar in your hand, you probably would not even notice. Although there are in some cases, severe compensations. But this is also what is part of the amazing thing about True Temperament, is that these are bended frets. Some of you may have seen other systems where you have tiny little frets. This is also sometimes used for microtonal guitar tunings, which again is a completely different thing and should not be at all confused with True Temperament. But the difference with those is that because you have little individual pieces, it's much more noticeable. What the finger seems to recognize is the fact that it's a solid piece. And here is a fun fact for you here. If you do look, for example, at the first fret here, you see how in on the third fourth string there, it's compensated quite severely in there. But if you look at least my finger and many others, the finger is naturally not straight anyway. So in an odd kind of way, in some cases, actually when it comes to making, for example, a bar chord on the first fret, surprisingly, it's actually more comfortable. It actually fits the finger better in many cases. Then it just seems to be that first of all, we shouldn't press too close to the fret anyway, because then we get a kind of damped sound. So we don't have to be that precise. And the other thing is that I think that we just tend to rely mostly on the feeling of the fret as a whole piece rather than anything else. It's not like we completely train our hand to go in a certain position. A lot of it has to do with feeling our way through the fretboard. So, and if you don't believe me, you should just basically try it. I have never seen anyone who actually couldn't just play it straight away. I made several videos with students in Portugal, and just as an experiment, none of them had tried the guitars with True Temperament before, and they all made beautiful videos. And if anything, they experienced using the Sueño guitars being perhaps easier than any other guitar before, but that has to do with a whole other thing, which is my special system of creating a very, very awesome setup, which makes it so easy to play, even to the degree that people sometimes think that even that the scale is smaller or something, because it's so comfortable. So even if you want a smaller scale guitar, you may not even need that because it's so comfortable to play already. Now I would like to talk to you a little bit about the compensations that I have developed in order to fully get the best use of True Temperament. And If you do get a Sueño guitar, the advantage is that I have already personally calibrated each and single instrument that goes out. And still though, saying that sometimes different strings may also affect each and every guitar differently. And of course now we're talking about the very minute perfection of this, but myself, I'm sort of a perfectionist, so I think as we're now implementing this system, we should use it as much as we can. All right, because we also should take in consideration that each instrument will have a particular setup to be just right, so sort of to be just low enough that it's comfortable to play, and but not too low that every note buzzes. Basically, that's a very great simplification, but I'm always looking for that sort of perfect balance where you achieve the fullest sound but the best playability. So you can see a bit of a close-up of the guitar here that I have compensated, and you can see here on the bridge and on the nut there's some adjustment that can be made. Okay, and as we see here, generally speaking, I like to use quite a low, particularly low action on the first string here. So most of the times it's pretty necessary to shorten that string quite a bit, up to 2 millimeters, to make it completely perfectly in tune. And the way to check this is, again, you use the tuner here and the offset list. Okay, so the other thing you should be aware of is that each guitar reacts very differently, and certain notes, independently of the frets, just sort of moves around in a different way. For example, already here you can see the first E string here first goes up and then it stabilizes. This is quite common, but in some cases it can be, for example here, stable there, but usually if you play it and let it ring, it settles, and that's what you should go for always. Now, for example, if I play the first E here, ideally I would want the next octave here to be the same. So that's one thing to look out for. And now, this is of course the really tricky thing about getting really in detail with this, is we have to be very conscious of the fact that the higher we go, the more the pressure of the string is affected. So for example, now it's normal pressure. If I press it a little higher, you see it, I can affect it up. Of course you wouldn't press this hard, but I'm just doing it as an example. But pressing very high, it can change up to 10 cents. And not to talk about if I just move like this. So the higher you go, the more complicated it is really to check this calibration. But as you're going up, just try to press just like you would press, and ideally it should be about the same. Okay, so plus, all right. So that one, for example, takes some time to stabilize it, and then it goes down. And also be aware, even if you play a harmonic, for example, it can be not exactly the same as the open, but more or less. So ideally, if you do have an issue with this, I recommend you get in contact with me before doing anything drastical, okay? But you could technically go through the entire fretboard. So let's say we're starting here -1, and then we continue to F, should be 0. All right, more or less. F sharp, -4, yes. G, you see, so it's not exactly possible to get it. A flat, -4, yes, pretty good. A, see, you can check pretty much how each and every string to each note reacts. And of course, as you will notice, there is not 100 precision here, and that's what makes it so very complicated. What is very important to look out for is particularly the E string, and also the other one I find is the A string. We have to be a little bit careful because, for example, if I tune this to A, you see D plus 2 is correct. Yes, that's correct, but it's very easily when we go up here. Yes, but it's pretty good. So for in this case, I've calibrated that quite precisely. Thank you so much for watching this video about the phenomenal invention of True Temperament. I hope that I have informed you sufficiently about several aspects of True Temperament, but of course, if you do have additional questions, please do get in contact with us, and I hope that you all get a chance to one day try a Sueño guitar or another True Temperament guitar. Thank you so much.